Despite how streamlined most jobs in Final Fantasy XIV are, sometimes to their benefit, sometimes to their detriment, depending on who you ask, there are a bunch of actions between all the jobs that range from straight up obviously bad, to really awkward to use well, to even straight up noob traps as they were. I'm sure most of you already envisioned one or more actions when I mentioned each of these things. A lot of the time, the suggested quote-unquote simple solution to these problems are, if the thing does damage, just make it do more damage, then it'll be good, right? If the thing is healing or otherwise not dealing damage, then there's a much stronger suggestion of just remove it, because in most cases, these seem to land in the noob trap category. However, in the case of the so-called noob traps, they tend to have a niche use, however specific, and so can function as incredible learning tools for new players to truly understand their job, assuming they can move past falling for it. For the damaging options that could be fixed by simply buffing them, unless the reason the button is bad is specifically because it is weak, giving it an incredible potency boost is more like ignoring the real problem. Obviously, we would all use Scathe if it did 1000 potency per cast instead of 100 when you don't roll the proc. But that would just make the rest of the toolkit obsolete instead, right? So, for the sake of this discussion, I would like to propose ways to fix some of these broken actions and traits, which, to the best of my ability, sidesteps simply buffing potency and avoids the suggestion of just delete it. And with that, I would also love to hear how you would fix some of the kinda balked actions and traits in Final Fantasy XIV in this same way, where you don't just take the easiest way out. Let's get started. Number 1. Scathe. A very simple instant cast spell for black mages that have very limited usefulness under normal circumstances. Granted, it is actually a pretty decent spell when doing unusual content like soloing Palace of the Dead, but that doesn't change the fact that Scathe leaves a lot to be desired. Scathe's average potency is 120, which also meant that at the launch of Dawntrail, Thunder 1's upfront potency of 120, which was since nerfed, effectively made Scathe dead on arrival, as Thunder was simply a better instant cast spell in 80% of the casted situations, with the only limitation being that Thunder ultimately could only be every second cast, which at least gave Scathe a use until you started to learn some of the better mobility options as a black mage. Now, Scathe, being a GCD with no real cooldown, is limited by the fact that it has the simple opportunity cost that you are not casting a fire spell to do more damage with, and you are not casting an ice spell to recover MP with, and you're not casting a thunder spell to maintain your dot. Not only does Scathe do less damage than most ice spells at its best, it also costs MP, meaning that it effectively does the opposite of advancing your rotation. The simplest way to make Scathe okay would be to boost its potency. I would also say removing the slim chance of doubling its damage would allow it to do more damage baseline without it running the risk of going out of control or something. However, simply making Scathe stronger ignores the fact that it is effectively a much inferior Holy and White with no true niche applications it uniquely applies to. In other words, if Scathe was boosted to, say, 180 potency and lost its ability to do double damage, it would still be considered a bad button. And if it was boosted to, say, 250 potency, it would actually be superior to Fire 1 with Astral Fire 1 because of cast attacks, and even with Fire 3 and Blizzard 3 at your disposal, you would have to write out the potential rotation to know for sure that Scathe wouldn't be the best choice. Leading to a black mage that, for many levels, just has this huge glaring noob trap instead that makes the job seem jankier as a result. What I'm getting at is that any solution that involves buffing the potency of Scathe and nothing else misses the point. If Scathe was strong, it just takes a different action's place, and Scathe is meant as a utility option for mobility. Scathe's potency could be adjusted on top, but giving it a different utility would probably be what really makes it shine. So here is my suggestion. Scathe's ability to sometimes do double damage and the MP cost is removed, but it now requires that you are either in Umbral Ice or Astral Fire to be usable. Additionally, whenever Scathe is cast, it extends the duration of your current state, Umbral Ice or Astral Fire, by 5 seconds. Its potency could be adjusted to 120 to maintain the same average potential, or be increased further. That's not super important here. Whatever the case, this gives black mages an option to extend their current state without changing lane completely, and it also works as a mobility option. By its and black mage's design, it is important that there are other, more complex and better options. But Scathe works as an excellent "I don't know what to do" option that allows you to halt your rotation while you figure things out. Number 2. Cure 1 and Freecure. Cure 1 is a spell that does 2 things better than Cure 2 does. The first is that it casts half a second faster than Cure 2. However, any situation where this half second actually mattered, it is incredibly likely that the fact Cure 1 is weaker than Cure 2 means that it is more like moving a wall someone is going to crash into anyway 1 meter further down the way. They're still going to crash, but hey, you bought them a second. The second thing is that Cure 1 is a much more MP efficient spell than Cure 2. Cure 2 is 0.8 potency per MP spent, Cure 1 is 1.25. However, MP is not really a scarce resource in Final Fantasy XIV. So again, the fact Cure 1 delivers the same healing slower than Cure 2 is a bigger problem. Freecure is a trait that makes Cure 1 better at what it does best, saving you MP. I've been told that both Cure 1's cheapness and Freecure has a niche use in certain cases if you do the A Realm Reborn raids at minimum item level no echo, or something like that. But outside of that, this MP saving feature is rarely relevant. To try and paint you a picture, imagine that this is all possible scenarios a white mage could find themselves in. Then this small blob are scenarios where you are playing well and efficiently, but run out of MP somehow. Now, this smaller blob inside it are scenarios where the fact you are out of MP somehow doesn't mean your raid is dead or going to die in a moment. And this even smaller blob inside that are the scenarios where Cure 1 and so Freecure are helpful. Just to not leave it out, let's say this large section over here are the scenarios where you're playing very inefficiently and throwing out MP unnecessarily. Over here, the section where Cure 1 and Freecure are helpful is significantly bigger. And yes, you're right, I did just draw a fish. Now, how do we fix Cure 1 or Freecure? Let's do them one at a time. For Freecure, let's just say that increasing its proc chance won't make it any better. The problem is that MP savings isn't really that helpful most of the time. So, I have 2 suggestions. The first one is to simply move Freecure's proc to stone instead. This doesn't really change the fact that Freecure is kinda meh, but it does increase the likelihood you happen to have the effect at a time where it could be handy to have. Increasing the duration of the proc would also be helpful so you don't feel like you have to hurry to spend it. My second suggestion would be to simply make Cure 2 cheaper. Benefic 2 is already significantly cheaper than Cure 2, so this would hardly change anything when it really comes to it. This would probably also be the least misleading or confusing solution of the 2. For Cure 1 then, the classic suggestion is to have Cure 1 automatically upgrade into Cure 2. The main reason why this could be problematic at all is that all existing cases of actions upgrading into a different action in the game have the action upgrade into a different action that is objectively superior to the original one in every way, with the exception of one. Sage's Flemma 1 does 400 potency to the main target, 30% less to others, meaning 280. Flemma 2 does 490 to the main target, but 50% less to others, meaning 245. All other action upgrades are objectively superior to the weaker version. Although not a direct upgrade, you could argue that Paradox isn't a perfect upgrade over Blizzard 1. If we then look at the Cure spells, Cure 2 takes longer to cast and costs more MP, so this would clash a bit with this design. As such, I would suggest a slightly different approach. Combined with the MP cost reduction suggestion for Freecure, add a trait that makes Cure 1 turn into Cure 2 while you have at least 1000 MP. That way, we can have both exist. Whether Cure 2's cast time should be adjusted is a different story. Number 3. Benefic 1 and Enhanced Benefic. While we're talking healers, let's take the Astrologian side too. Enhanced Benefic, opposite to Freecure, is more about boosting your healing for cheaper. However, as we already discussed, the amount of situations where MP is a real problem are few, so the raw healing potential is what matters more. If we assume no gear, then considering the base crit chance and power, Benefic 1 is worth 555.6 or so potency, 510 originating from itself and 45.6 originating from the potential gain of changing the next Benefic 2 from being a chance to being assured. By comparison, Benefic 2, as it is worth around 816 potency, considering chance to crit. Another way to look at it is the difference between casting 2 Benefic 2s and casting Benefic 1, then 2. On average, 2 Benefic 2s is worth 1632 potency in this context. Casting Benefic 1, then 2 has a 15% chance of averaging 1630 potency, and an 85% chance of averaging 1326. This average of averages lead to an absolute average of 1371.6 potency. Having more crit chance actually closes the gap between these two options a bit, but to put it into perspective, Enhanced Benefic would need close to a guaranteed proc rate to be considered worth it. As such, Enhanced Benefic is kind of a noob trap in the same way Freecure is. And Benefic 2 is already super cheap. As such, my suggested solution would be the same as for Cure 1. Add a trait that causes Benefic 1 to turn into Benefic 2 when above, say, 1000 MP. And then for Enhanced Benefic, maybe just give Benefic 1 and 2 a slight enhanced crit chance innately? Alternatively, Malefic could have the proc, or it could even be activated after drawing cards or something. Number 4. Machinists Flamethrower. So, Machinist is one of the weirdest jobs when it comes to AoE. Blazing Shot combined with the checks beats Auto Crossbow and Flamethrower on raw potency alone on up to 4 targets. Weirdly, Blazing Shot still beats Flamethrower on 5 targets, but not Auto Crossbow. Additionally, Flamethrower never beats Auto Crossbow, as Auto Crossbow scales slightly better with target count than Flamethrower. The advantage Flamethrower has is that it doesn't cost a resource. So, in a real scenario, you would likely have to assume you have to cast 5 scatterguns per 5 Auto Crossbows, and there Flamethrower wins. In fact, it beats that combo on any number of targets. However, because Heat Gauge itself has value on any number of targets, relatively speaking being extra valuable on lower target counts, there could be an argument that using Scattergun until the target count drops a bit, and then using Blazing Shot on the healthiest target could be superior in the moment. As such, Flamethrower may feel like it still isn't strong enough, despite actually being a solid attack option. Obviously, once again, the simple solution is to just buff Flamethrower more. And indeed, there will be a sweet spot where eventually Flamethrower is actually just really strong, so you use it on cooldown. However, is there another way? 2 things I would like to bring up. 1. Flamethrower is the only GZD affected action not on Blue Mage that has a cooldown and is designed to be bad on a single target. Even attacks that clearly look like they're designed for AoE first and foremost, if they expend some sort of resource and is the only spend of said resource, or has a cooldown, they will at the very least do relevant enough damage to a single target, especially if it is a GZD. The perfect example of this is Black Mage's Foul spell. When it is initially learned, it has a cast time and does 600 potency to the primary target, much less to secondary targets. However, even with the potency buffs Fire 4 has received, Fire 4 still only peaks at 576 potency compared to Foul, ignoring Enochian and so on since they both benefit from those. Meaning Foul is still a better spell than Fire 4 on a single target. Eventually, Xenoglossy is learned, making Foul being superior on single target redundant, as there is a designated single target version to use. The second thing I would like to mention is actually about Blue Mage. Apocalypsis is a 10-second channeled ability Blue Mages have access to that actually does so much damage that it is competitive with the mutually exclusive ability Being Mortal due to its raw power when used optimally. However, under most reasonable circumstances, standing still and channeling this for 10 seconds just isn't realistic. That is to say, any solution for Flamethrower that makes it viable to use in a boss fight, for instance, should probably remove the possibility of channeling it for 10 whole seconds, as its power otherwise must be balanced around the possibility it could. With that, I have 3 different suggestions, some of which could be combined, I guess. The first one is that Flamethrower's issue with being compared to Scattergun and sometimes found wanting can be resolved simply by giving Flamethrower the ability to generate heat gauge. For instance, if it generates 50 heat gauge over its duration, it would generate heat gauge slightly faster or a lot faster than Scattergun, making Flamethrower superior in every way, except flexibility and mobility. The second suggestion is to give Flamethrower the classic does X potency to the primary target with Y% less to the remaining enemies effect. That way, Flamethrower's potency could be balanced to even be good on one target. Given its long duration, I could imagine it being a decent filler option or something. It would, however, still be very, very awkward. This could also be combined with reducing the total duration of Flamethrower, so you have to stand still for not nearly as long to really make it worth it. The third suggestion is to simply rework Flamethrower entirely. The most boring solution to that, but the only one I can initially come up with, is as follows. Air Anchor, among the multi-tool options Machinist has, is the only one without an AoE option. Flamethrower's cooldown could be changed to 40 seconds, become an instant GZD that simply functions as the AoE alternative to Air Anchor, meaning it also generates 20 battery gauge. Similar to Bioblaster, it could also apply a burning dot. This is, however, a very, very boring solution. Maybe you have a better idea. Number 5. Scholar's Energy Drain. Wait, hear me out. So, Energy Drain is an extremely contentious ability in the Scholar's toolkit. Some players love it, others hate it. The significant meaning of Energy Drain is that it means that a resource that is otherwise meant to be used for healing and defense can be used for offense. And because of the optimizing nature of, well, us players, a lot of us will look at this and go, oh, the Aetherflow resource goes in the Energy Drain hole. Which means from some level of optimization, some players will view it as making all other Aetherflow spenders pointless, as they don't do damage, whereas Energy Drain does. In a hard fight, Energy Drain on every Aetherflow is an unlikely level of perfection to reach, and it is an extreme level of optimization to say the least. Which means that in a real scenario, Energy Drain does offer a level of strategic awareness for the Scholar to make sure they prioritize using other options first. A nuance that Sage does not have in the same way. Some say that's good, some say that's bad. At the same time, Energy Drain offers a perfect solution to the problem of, I have extra ether flow I didn't need anywhere else, what do I do with that? In fact, Scholar Energy Drain was removed at the launch of Shadowbringers, but shortly after re-added because the Scholars disliked having nothing to spend their excess ether flow on. In other words, removing Energy Drain produces a new problem. So what can be done instead? Suggestion 1. Replace Energy Drain with an ability that generates some amount of barrier on the raid, expending all remaining ether flow to do so. If this barrier lasts long enough, it can at least intercept damage that is not yet here, which makes it better than dumping the ether flow on, I don't know, Indomitability or Lost Rate for no reason. However, the reason the ether flow was in excess was because there weren't enough things to heal in the first place, so it is unlikely this is helpful. Suggestion 2. When ether flow, the ability itself, is cast with leftover ether flow, the resource, in the gauge, the excess is turned into extra MP, say 500 MP per charge. Before Endwalker, Energy Drain generated 500 MP in addition to the damage, meaning it was a way to convert your ether flow to MP in a tight spot. This was removed while ether flow, the ability, had its MP generation doubled. This could be a solution, however, it is unlikely Scholars will need that much extra MP anyway. Again, the ether flow was in excess for a reason. Suggestion 3. Spending ether flow charges on abilities generate energy spikes or something, which can be spent exclusively on Energy Drain. Essentially meaning that all ether flow spenders have a side effect of giving you an Energy Drain to use. So, in the cases where you have excess ether flow, you can just spend them on Lost Rate and then throw out Energy Drains. However, this removes the strategic element of actually managing your resources well for a reward of extra damage, which some Scholar mains actually like about it. So we are at a bit of an impasse. But what do you think? Do you have better suggestions for some of these actions and traits? Do you like my suggestions? Maybe you have an idea for an action or trait I didn't cover. I would love to hear about it all in the comments. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, originally Scathe's potency was 120. This was reduced in 2.1 to where it is now for some reason. Furthermore, the effect of Scathe being able to do double damage with a 20% chance was originally a trait learned at level 24, but this was removed and the effect baked into Scathe with Stormblood's release.